Welcome to the Gonzalo and Jessica Show, becoming porn-free and empowering your sex life.
This is a show to help men to heal from pornography addiction and grow themselves into a healthy sexual life. For today's episode number 1, Gonzalo and I are simply going to share our stories with you so you as our audience can get to know us a little bit more on a little bit more of a deeper level, and you can know who we are, why we're doing what we're doing, and how you can benefit from it. So thank you for tuning in, and here is our very first episode.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Jessica. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, Gonzalo.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gonzalo and Jessica Show. The show that you want to watch if you want to become porn-free and empower your sex life. Jessica, where are you located right now?
I am in the very northern California on the coast. I can look through the trees and see the ocean, and it's right by the Redwood National Forest. So I go hiking in the Redwood Forest on a regular basis. It's gorgeous.
So we are both right now on the Pacific coast. At least I'm temporarily here. I'm in Seattle right now, and I will be going back very soon to Miami, where I'm usually based. First of all, thank you so much for attending my call. Thank you for replying so kindly to my request. I discovered you on social media, and I was actually reading your posts. I was seeing like your videos, and I said to myself, wow, like I've done my research in the topic of porn, and I know my people. I know when someone has done their homework, when someone knows their stuff, I was looking at the things that you were publishing, and I said, wow, this woman is like the real deal. She's doing brilliant stuff. So, I decided to talk to you on social media, and I'm glad that you decided to reply to me.
Yeah, when you first reached out to me, which was recently, it was only a few weeks ago.
Exactly, yeah.
And I was honored because you have published a book, an amazing book on pornography addiction and overcoming that. And you've been doing this already for years, helping men. You're helping a lot of men like right now. And it was an honor for me to have you reach out for me. And it was cool because originally you were like, hey, can I interview you for my podcast? Because you have 2 other podcasts right now. And we got to talking. And then it turned out now we're creating our own podcast together.
Exactly. And I think this is the how things naturally evolve. And when you allow the energy to flow naturally, I think how the most beautiful things can happen or can manifest, I guess this would be the best way that we can reach a larger audience that actually need help with pornography addiction.
Absolutely.
I guess by this moment, you and I, we both know the level of pain that a man with pornography addiction is enduring on a regular basis. So this is what naturally evolved out of like the many conversations that we've had in the previous weeks.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I'm super excited.
Me too. It's the thing that stood out to me, and that, we've talked about this together already, is we are so in alignment with how to deliver the help to the men who raise their hand and say, I need help. And it's really cool to finally see someone else and meet someone else, which is you, who seems to be doing it in that thorough, comprehensive way. And I've gotten to know, a few like other programs and how they're operating, and the men who I am currently working with, who have attempted other programs. They do help many other men, but there does seem to be some missing gaps. And you seem to have filling those missing gaps that I'm also filling. And they seem so critical. And I think that was one of my draws to you, is just
Absolutely.
that understanding.
And if I have to tell you something right now, I truly have to confess, right, that I I couldn't like wrap my mind around how a woman that hasn't precisely been a porn addict like I was, you know,
Mhm.
how does she know so much? How does it's almost like when I was reviewing your work, like I was there for more than 20 years, you know,
Mhm.
and I know what it feels. I know what is your body reaction when you are about to relapse, after you relapse, like all the minimum details, you know. But I couldn't understand how a woman that wasn't precisely, um, you know, a porn recovered person, you know, like
Yeah.
how you knew so much about addiction, about the neuroscience of the addiction, about like specific protocols to get out of the destructive behavior, like so many things. And I was like, wow, like this woman like has done her homework, you know. So it is a true honor to be sharing this space with you. And I'm telling you, like, I'm beyond excited doing this podcast with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gonzalo. That's like a really heartwarming thing to hear. So I
Mm,
really appreciate that so much.
absolutely.
And
And
yeah,
well, I mean, obviously we've prepared some questions and probably things to have the
absolutely.
audience, you know, getting to know us, right?
Right.
So, but right before, um, I would like to ask you, um, what is the intention of this podcast? For the sake of, you know, letting the audience know,
Yeah,
what is the intention of this podcast?
that's a great question. Well, one, for men who have already, there could be several intentions,
Mm-hmm.
several types of men who this might appeal to, who this might help. One, the obvious, men who have already self-identified as pornography being a problem in their life, and they're figuring out how the heck to eliminate this problem and jump into a more empowering life. So that's one aspect, one reason, one intention. It could also be for men who are unsure, on the fence. Like, ooh,
Mm-hmm.
like pornography might be bad, but I really love it so much. And I don't really quite think I want to give it up. Could be for those men as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it could actually even be for women who have male partners, romantic sexual partners in their life, who are curious and either know or suspect that their spouse or their boyfriend or their lover, whatever label you want to put on it, might want to learn more about this process, especially coming from my perspective, which we'll get into more later, being one of my ex-partners was very severely addicted to pornography while I was with him. So I have that perspective as well.
Amazing. I
Yeah.
love it. Like I couldn't say it before. I couldn't say it in a better way. Yeah. And I am I want to take something that you just said, right? And I would like to expand a little bit on that
Okay.
because you said something very important that unfortunately, because of lack of information out there, many men don't know. It's simple as that.
Right.
They don't know. And the word addiction, it sounds so harsh, you know, it has such a horrible connotation, right?
Mhm.
And this word, like many men that are experiencing some issues with pornography, they don't identify as addicts. Eh, maybe because they have a different idea, or they don't know what is that, so because this word really has a very, very heavy connotation, so
Absolutely.
so what would you say to men that actually have no idea if they are addicts or not, if they have a problem with porn or not? What would you say to them? How do you appeal to them to at least open up to listen?
Absolutely. Well, I would say put it to the test.
Mm.
You can either go and do your research on, there's different ways you can do it. Do your research a little bit if you're more of a scientific thinker, on the neuroscience and how the super stimuli that we can be exposed to affects the neuroreceptors, the dopamine receptors in our brain. That's one side of it. Or just simply put it to the test. Challenge yourself to go a full month without pornography. And all right, so this is the cool part. It's like, well, maybe cool is not the right word, but the convincer, which to me, when you're convinced, it's kind of cool. It's an eye opener. So when you decide to go a month without pornography, if you experience any bit of discomfort, extra anxiety, insomnia, extra cravings to look at your phone or digital sources in other capacities, cravings for junk food, your brain is seeking higher hits of dopamine, the low-hanging fruit high hits of dopamine that are instant gratification that you don't have to work hard for. Pornography fits into that category. You remove it, the brain says, whoa, we need to fill the void with that. If you experience those cravings or irritability, anxiety, insomnia, those things, wow, that's a sign that you are likely or perhaps on the spectrum of being addicted to pornography. And two, if you are unwilling to give it up for a month, that's another sign that you might be on the spectrum of addiction with pornography.
Absolutely, yeah. And I've seen that many, many times. Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure you've got this type of like conversation, which is, a man coming and saying, I watch porn here and there, but I'm not an addict. I watch occasionally, but I'm not an addict. And we're gonna go and develop that on a different episode. But it is something to observe, because this is something, unfortunately, internet high-speed porn today is highly addictive.
Yep.
It teaches really, really bad behavior when it comes to sexuality. And it really damaged the belief system in regards to sex to the person that consumes that on a regular basis. So we're going to go into that in the further episodes, but we just want to like at least give a little taste of what this podcast is going to be about. And I know I've said this twice already, but I'm beyond excited.
Me too. Me too. Yes.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we have some really great topics that we're going to cover today. And should we just jump right into those right now?
Absolutely. That would be amazing.
All right. Well, I'll just go ahead and ask you the first question then, Gonzalo.
Sure.
So what compelled you to do this amazing work that you do, working with these men who are coming to you for help?
Okay. First of all, thank you for the question. And unfortunately, it's not precisely the happiest answer, but it's something that I've been able to integrate in my life. When I was 11, and I was born in 1980, so you can do the math. I come from the pre-internet world. It's a whole different planet, and some people, maybe some archaeologists out there might remember a magazine called Playboy. you know. And so when I was 11 years old, 1991, and I found a Playboy magazine at home, you know,
Yeah.
and I was with my two older brothers. I showed that to them. I was astonished. I was mesmerized. I found, I was more excited than Gollum about the ring, you know, like
Yeah.
it was my precious. He was the most beautiful thing because I was looking at a naked woman, and by that moment, it was like the most um, amazing thing that I was witnessing, you know. At my 11, I was 11 years old, you know, and I showed the magazine to my brothers, to my siblings, to Fernando and to Victor. I, I I showed the magazine, and they're like, oh, okay. They took a look, you know,
Oh, okay.
and then whatever, you know, and they gave the magazine back to me. And I was like, wait a minute, like I'm showing you the holy grail, you know, like I'm showing you like the most beautiful thing on the planet, and you are like just like, okay. And I got totally hooked on that magazine, you know. Um, and you know, that magazine, it led to, you know, sexually explicit magazines, and then uh, Betamax uh, porn videos and VHS. You probably remember VHS, you know, the
Oh yeah, yep.
VCR
Absolutely.
things,
Uh-huh.
the VHS, and then the one thing led to another until, you know, mid 2000s. You know, fast forward, of course, probably like 13 years or something like that, you know, in front of the tube sites with a high-speed internet, you know, a totally anonymous a porn consumption and infinite and free. And, you know, like by that time I was totally hooked on porn. And, you know, it, time goes, and that time passed by, and I was 30, totally addicted to porn, and I started experiencing all the symptoms that you and I know that are, you know, part of what happened with a person that is totally hooked on porn, you know. So I lost my willpower. I was living a facade. My life socially was completely fake, you know. And I was always feeling anxious. I was uh, always feeling depressed. I was showing a different life because I was always optimistic and, you know, like putting a facade of someone being super happy, but I was completely empty.
Yeah.
So fast forward, when I started doing my healing work, I meet this woman. And by the way, on those years, I've, I've had different relationships. I've lived with 3 different women, right?
Yeah.
And still, I was deriving more pleasure from porn than from having sex with them, you know? So
Yeah.
fast forward, when I already started my healing process, I fall in love with this woman, and I'm gonna have sex with her, and I couldn't get it up, you know,
Yeah.
and I
Yep.
started experiencing something that is already, you know, classified on the scientific literature, which is PIED, you know, porn-induced erectile dysfunction.
Yep.
And that was like hitting rock bottom. So the following weeks, she totally ghosted me, right? The following weeks were horrible because I was depressed. I couldn't have my normal sexual functions. I was I was in a dark hole. You know, I was in a horrible cave. And yeah, that was the first time I contemplated suicide. Yeah. And
Yeah.
not that I was thinking about it, but I was actually planning that, you know.
Yeah.
my former brother-in-law, we used to go to the shooting range, right? And yeah, my brother-in-law, he owned a gun. I was gonna just take it and finish things. And then one special thing happened. I went running. When I was running and being exhausted after working out,
Yeah.
I at least I could sleep, and while I was sleeping, I wouldn't feel the pain. So when I was running, I was like literally crying at all times every day. So I was running in front of the ocean. I was living in North Miami Beach by that time. And I just like got with all my running gear inside of the ocean. And I was inside of the ocean for something like 30 minutes, crying non-stopping. And I just kind of like made some sort of like a sacred agreement. And I said, like to this infinite divine force, I said, you know what, please heal me, help me to heal, and I will devote my life to this. I know it sounds very maybe romantic, the story, but that's a story, and that's how I started my path. I came out on social media with this problem. I started having men asking for advice, and since then I started researching, applying that to myself, helping other men, and little by little I started working with this, and until today that I became a sex educator after several certifications, courses, seminars, workshops, and all that. So in a nutshell, that's my story.
Beautiful. Thank you, Gonzalo. That's like, I love, you say it sounds romantic, the way I love that was the contract that you signed for yourself.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And I gotta tell you, like, I'm doing this happily. I am super. I am at peace in my heart that I'm doing this, because I know that is making a big difference in many men's lives. So super happy about it. So obviously, I want to ask you, how did you end up doing this amazing work?
Yeah, great question. And so, I love that our stories are so different, and there's definitely some overlapping components, but mostly they're different. And I love that about us. So for me, it's going to be almost 6 years ago, when I was a wildlife biologist and I was working in the redwood forest, using my voice to hoot for owls and finding their nest trees to help prevent extinction. And anyway, I was like, I had a long weekend and I went with 5 other friends on a rock climbing trip. We took a lunch break at the bottom of the cliff, and we're sitting on our boulders, laughing, having fun. And I ate something that changed the course of my life forever. And I had a can of smoked oysters, and there happened to be a very naturally occurring seafood neurotoxin in those smoked canned oysters. And this neurotoxin is called ciguatera neurotoxin. And it's 1,000 times more poisonous and potent than arsenic. And a tiny bit of arsenic can kill a human being. And this is an extreme neurotoxin that I had ingested. And the next day it landed me in the emergency room. And we thought I was either having a heart attack or a stroke or something. And it ended up putting a 19-millimeter lesion on the left front lobe of my brain. It ended up really wreaking hardcore havoc on my nervous system, my autonomic nervous system. And it gave me severe and complex PTSD, chronic pain, to the point where I was also contemplating suicide, because I didn't know how to, I didn't want to live with the physical and emotional pain. And at one point I said, I'm going to devote every moment of every day of my life to solving this problem. And if I do not see progress 6 months, I will start planning the end of my life. And it was, my memory was bad. If it was 5 years ago and you and I were having this conversation, come tomorrow, I would have zero recollection that this even happened.
Wow.
That's where my memory was. And if you start giving me all of the details of this, I might start to remember the emotion behind the experience. And that's about all I could conjure up. And once I realized that, it was really scary. And the neurotoxin made my heart at extreme risk of cardiac arrest day and night. And I used to sleep. I used to have a Forerunner. I had the back made into a bed. And even though I lived in a beautiful home, I would drive myself and my old dog to the emergency room parking lot. And that's where I slept because I needed to be near a defibrillator in case my heart stopped, of which I was at extremely high risk. Day and night, especially about the first hour after I fell asleep, was my highest risk. So I was terrified of everything, and eating most foods I would eat could also send me into cardiac arrest and respiratory paralysis, so I couldn't breathe. And even the emergency, I was constantly in and out of the emergency room. And even the emergency room doctor, I told him I was planning on sleeping in the back of my Forerunner in the emergency room parking lot. And I wanted him to say, "You're overreacting, you're having too much fear." But he said, "Yeah, given your condition, that's not a bad idea."
Wow.
And that terrified me even more. And so I was living in a state of incredible fear, emotional pain, fear, physical pain. The chronic pain would be so intense, it would give me hallucinations and out-of-body experiences. And it was basically like going on a really, really, really bad drug trip that I did not sign up for. Because this is a neurotoxin and it can cause all sorts of, and so then about a year into it, I got into a relationship and got a boyfriend basically. And my time initially spent with him was so fantastic that he became my escapism from reality, my escapism from the physical and emotional pain I was experiencing in my life. And because my time, so he ultimately became my drug of choice. He became my drug of choice. And a lot of people are not aware that human beings, we can get addicted to just about anything, even water. Dr. Anna Lemke, she is an addiction recovery specialist, and she talks about one of her patients who was addicted to water and ultimately died. And I was addicted to a human being. In psychology, it's called a trauma bond. You can have a trauma bond with someone. And neurochemically, what's going on in the brain, it can be identical to being addicted to hard drugs, to pornography, to gambling. It's the same. You remove the drug of choice, activity of choice, and the withdrawal symptoms are the same. And so since when I met him and spent time with him, it was the very first time that I forgot that there was anything wrong with me. I was able to forget that I was sick. I was able to forget I was in pain. And therefore, he became my drug of choice, my escapism from my reality, which is how most addictions start, by wanting to escape from reality in some way. They don't all start that way, but many of them do. And since I had PTSD, trauma, pretty severe version of it, someone who has PTSD that is unresolved, your risk of addiction goes way up, skyrockets to escape the pain. And usually it happens without conscious awareness. And then you realize it and you're like sucked in so deep and it's too late. Not too late, but like you're already in the addiction. So hard. And so that I was addicted to him as a person, as an escapism, my drug of choice. Simultaneously, I became addicted to sex. The cravings, the urges, the like not being able to sleep, just like my mind was so there, not being able to function the right way at work, acting in inappropriate ways that just are not, I would just like, a person in a normal, healthy brain would not act out in these ways. And I was, part of it was looking, there was kind of two parts of the equation. Hating myself for not healing myself fast enough, feeling like I was a worthless piece of scum on the earth because I was so sick that I felt like there was nothing I could contribute back to society. And it made me feel like a leech on society. And so my self-compassion was in the garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And so through sexual experiences with living human beings, whether in person or digitally, receiving sexual attention from another person is instant validation. And since I had such low self-compassion, I needed validation from other people in order for me to feel like a valuable person. And seeking that through sexual experiences is one of the quickest, easiest, and strongest ways we can experience that. And so many people are doing that without realizing that, like, oh, it's because I don't actually value myself as a human being. So I seek validation from other people, and through these sexual outlets is the quickest, fastest, easiest way to do it. That's one part of it. And two, so this is my theory. I have no idea if this has been studied in science, but I mean, I have a pretty scientific thinking mind, and I got my bachelor's degree in biology, and I really, on my own time, studied the heck out of neuroscience. And if any of you scientists are listening to this who study stuff like this wants to be a research project, that would be amazing. Someone who's living with PTSD, unresolved trauma, we are at the highest risk of being oxytocin deficient. Having an oxytocin deficiency puts a person in a terrible place. Oxytocin is a neurochemical in our brain that makes us feel safe, calm, content, relaxed. It acts as a natural physical painkiller and an emotional painkiller, and it makes you just feel wonderful. I was extremely oxytocin deficient, and engaging in sexual activities, especially as a woman, but as a man too, but especially as a woman during orgasm or whatever, oxytocin skyrockets. So my theory is that since I was so extremely oxytocin deficient, my subconscious mind knew the quickest way to boost oxytocin, to get oxytocin to healthy levels, but it took it to the extreme and turned me into a sex addict. So that I would go and seek it, even though I was seeking it in unhealthy places and ways that were just adding toxicity to my life and significantly prolonging my healing journey. And so then the boyfriend that I had at the time, we were for about 3 years on and off. He was severely addicted to pornography and alcohol and his cell phone. I mean, let's face it, almost everyone who has a cell phone is somewhere on the spectrum of addiction to it. I don't want to say everyone, but most of us. You know, if you leave your phone at home and you drive away, a lot of people will turn around to go get it. Do you really need it? Anyway, so I was addicted to a person that I was dating I was a sex addict. He was a porn addict. He didn't like to have sex with a real person because he wanted it from pornography. So the longest amount of time that he would spend the night at my house would be maybe 3 nights in a row. And that was a lot. And there would not be sex happening during that time. Almost never happened. And that's the one thing that I wanted. And the one thing he wanted was, going back to his house so he could engage in his pornography addiction. It was a really messed up situation. Really messed up situation. And I learned a big lesson. I had put myself in the victim chair. I said, if only he would treat me the right way, I could heal. I was putting the blame on him, and that was not fair to him. And it did not help me. It was disempowering me and putting me in the victim seat. And I was like, he needs to quit pornography so that he wants to have sex with me so that I can raise my oxytocin, which is a requirement to heal from addiction and PTSD. And I was putting the blame on him. And eventually, over the years of going through this process, I switched from being judgmental towards him to, once I learned his level of suffering, I switched from judgment to compassion. I looked at him in his shoes, like he's suffering on a deep and extreme level. He doesn't want to be there. He's feeling lost at how to recover from this. And once I started looking at it through his view, the view of a porn addict, I'm like, wow, I know what it's like to be in the addict chair, the addict perspective, and I would be willing to go through any length to feed my addiction. I remember at one point having the thought, if I could have him in my life in the way that I wanted him to be in my life, and I had to choose between him and all of the members of my family, I remember having this thought. This is the mind of an addict thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I would choose him in my life and give up ever seeing any member of my family for the rest of my life.
Wow. Wow.
That's the mind of an addict.
Wow.
That's why addicts will steal from their family to go, if their addict costs money, like hard drugs and gambling, addicts will steal from their family, sell the jewelry, this is the mind of an addict.
Mm.
We're not proud of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've 100% recovered from all of that, and which is amazing. And so once I put my mind into his shoes, switching from judgment to compassion, and then here's the kicker. Like, there was one day when I needed to devote myself, like self-compassion, learn to love myself, learn to forgive myself. And I was sitting outside in a chair, hating on myself so bad. And I was consciously aware of what was going on. And I said, Jessica, you need to pull yourself out of this. This is not who you are. Consciously, I knew I was valuable. Consciously, I knew I was knowledgeable. I could give back to society. Subconsciously, I was like, I'm a piece of garbage. And I said, I know how I can fix this. I need to go into a meditation where you can align your conscious and subconscious beliefs. And I said, my goal of this meditation, it was a Dr. Joe Dispenza meditation, changing beliefs and perceptions. And I was able to do such a stellar job in that meditation that I felt more self-compassion for myself than I'd ever felt in my entire life. I felt no lack, nothing was missing. And this is what happened. I said, like, the one thing I wanted, I was like, wow, I feel so amazing. The one thing I did want was for other people to feel as amazing as I did in that moment. And the first thing that came into my mind was, who's suffering the most? Pornography addicts, men who are addicted to pornography. And I'm sure that's what came into my mind because I was still trauma bonded, addicted to that man at the time. And so in that instant, like, I had invented like the perfect protocol for men to recover from addiction. And the cool thing is, so I focus on pornography, but it can be used for any addiction. And these are the things that I used to heal myself. So there was like neuroscience backed with experience that was proved. I proved it to myself. This is solid. And so then right then and there, I decided to devote my life to helping men overcome pornography addiction. Wow. In that moment, in that meditation. And I got up and started dancing around my room. And I did what I call a self-compassion dance. And it was just like this glorious, amazing, wonderful thing. And that is why I'm doing what I'm doing now. Wow.
What a beautiful story, my dear. And yes, you're totally right. We have, completely different stories. And the most beautiful part, I guess, is how we both became, people helping people, like how we chose this path of that is very difficult and underground, growing so much, which is the men that are out in the world having issues with pornography, because the numbers are crazy. The numbers are rising, right?
Astronomical.
I just go by some official numbers, that are actually measured by clicks. And I mean, Pornhub used to put their numbers publicly until they started having federal problems, like federal accusations for all the things that their sites, I'm talking about like the mother company, which is MindGeek. Their sites, they probably control more than I think 60% of the internet porn, right? And their sites allow many things that are, you know, right now being investigated because
Yeah.
are illegal, you know?
Yeah.
So they started having federal problems, and in 2019 was the last year that they put their numbers out there publicly. And just in 2019, um, is I remember two numbers. The first number is that they had a 42 billion unique visits.
Wow.
42 billion. You got to take into account that the human population on planet Earth is 7.8 billion. So there are people out there consuming porn.
Oh, yeah.
So that's
Oh, yeah.
that's the number one. And the other number was that I don't remember specifically, but it was something like I am just giving you the approx number, but it's really close. In order to watch all the hours that were all the hours of porn that were uploaded to Pornhub in 2019,
Yeah.
if you watch that straight non-stopping, you would need something like 120 years.
That's madness.
That's madness.
That's
You're
madness.
right. So I mean, and the thing is, you and I know that this is such a taboo topic that nobody's talking about this, but this is the silent pandemic.
Yes, the silent pandemic.
Yeah.
It is. It really is. That's the perfect term for it.
Exactly. So right now, the real situation is that an entire generation is already out there. All like the millennials grew up with high-speed internet.
Yeah.
You know, and we are having an entire generation right now operating in society that what they know about sexuality was learned from porn.
Right.
And this is completely unhealthy. And we cannot be naive to deny that this will have consequences as a collective for humanity.
Massive consequences. Massive consequences.
Totally.
It affects 100% of how you show up in your life, how you interact, how you engage, how you can hold your attention, your focus, your motivation, your emotional regulation, all of it.
Absolutely.
All of it.
Absolutely. So, yeah. Well, my dear, thank you so much. Thank you for opening up in such an honest way.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure, I mean, there are many things that you mentioned that I'm sure will develop, because I'm going to ask you like a zillion questions about that. And just asking you about your experience, I'm sure is going to help so many people out there, you know, because they're going to self-identify with that story and they're going to say, wow, something similar happened to me. So, yeah.
Well, shall we go on to our next question?
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
So,
yeah, Gonzalo, how did you overcome this?
okay. So my path was very unusual, right? I did what any contemporary person in the Western world would do when I found out that I had this, which is go and try to find a solution on the internet, you know? And I found probably, you know, 2 or 3 people that were actively helping with this in the English speaking world. I found absolutely nothing in the Spanish speaking world, right? And I started just researching on what it was out there, you know? And like I remember nowadays, the term porn addiction, even though it hasn't been accepted as official diagnosis, right?
Like In the
So,
DSM-5 manual.
exactly. The
Yeah.
manual doesn't accept that. As a matter of fact, I have to tell you like a quick story. I got invited to CNN en Español. They have a beautiful office in Miami, right? So when I published my book, Conquering Porn Addiction, I got invited to CNN en Español. And when I was there, they sat me as the writer, and next to me, they sat a psychologist that is a usual guest for different shows in Spanish, you know? So I got invited, and then all of a sudden, I started kind of like feeling an attack, you know, kind of like a subtle attack from the psychologist that was saying, I was talking about porn addiction because I've lived that.
Yeah.
I've seen many, many men that I work with that have that. And then all of a sudden she's like, you know, the DSM-5 doesn't accept this. So for us, it's a disorder of the human behavior. We cannot classify this as an addiction. So, and she, all of a sudden, she started disqualifying everything that I was saying. I mean, it was my first time on TV and all that. And I was like so naive for the media and all that. And I realized how behind the official science can be. I have to tell you, and I have to make this clear.
Yes.
I love science, and this is not trying to talk bad about science because you know, basically you and I base a lot of our work in science.
Yes.
But the thing is, when it comes to like the community that accept or decide, you know, all the thing that is categorized as peer reviewed, they have to go through paradigm shift in order to accept certain things that might be happening in society for years or decades already.
Absolutely.
You know, so having that level of acceptance for the scientific community might take some time, you know, might take some time. I think it was, I'm not quoting properly this thing, but I think an edition of the DSM, maybe like in the 70s, they were categorizing homosexuality as a disease or something like that. So it is, we need to like come to a place of common sense, you know? So I realized that many of the things that I was saying right there, they were being completely disqualified just because it wasn't a part of the official narrative, you know?
Right. Absolutely.
So when I started searching for tools in order to heal myself, I started going to what was officially accepted and many, many non-conventional things, you know? So I went to all kind of therapy. I did different modalities of therapies, like I would say 3 or 4 different modalities of therapy. I started also working with energy healers. I started working with a Tantra practitioner to help me to move sexual energy throughout my body, creating a new different pattern. I started doing psychedelic work. I'm from Peru, right? I started working with a plant that is called ayahuasca. You know, I started working with probably 12 to 15 different modalities. I really wanted to heal, and healing became my #1 priority. Why? Because I knew, and this is something that the audience needs to have absolutely clear, if you don't heal this, nothing will happen in your life, because this is eating up all your creative force. You are devoting your sexual energy to this. That is like a black hole that is sucking your creative sexual energy, and you are not you don't have the fuel to create a reality for yourself. So my number one priority became to heal. And when I was capable of feeling that I took that burden out of my shoulders, that was the moment when I felt safer. I felt more comfortable on my own skin, and I was capable of having the certainty within my body that I could help someone else, because I was feeling in my body, okay, now you're safer now. And even I would test myself, like staying at home with my cell phone, with my computer and all that. And before, I didn't have any kind of control. Like I would go and watch porn, and I would like indulge myself on this crazy vice. But I started like testing myself, and I was more relaxed. I wasn't feeling the anxiety between me and the screen. I wasn't feeling all that. So yeah, that's how I overcame all these problems, searching for every tool that I could get my hands on.
Absolutely. We have some similarities in that.
Oh yeah, I want to hear yours. You tell me how do you overcome this? How do you start like just searching different modalities? What were you thinking of during that process? Tell me how you overcame this situation.
Yeah, so I first jumped into just looking into the peer-reviewed science and the papers, and from there deducing what I need to do and come up with my own protocol, my own formula, my own roadmap to my healing and to get to the future that I wanted to. And I actually, you might say, I would say this about myself, I developed a neuroses. I became neurotic about researching and educating myself, because to me, the more knowledge I had, it was a survival tactic. It was like, I need to learn this in order to know how to heal my mind and my body. And I would be an insomniac. I couldn't sleep. Everything was a giant mess. And I would spend the time researching these peer-reviewed papers. And, I had already graduated from a biology degree where I was already accustomed to reading and writing and analyzing and dissecting scientific papers. And so with my brain damage, once I built up basically the capacity to be able to like read and comprehend things again, because for a while, like I was almost like I was a drunk, stuttering person. My rate of processing was totally slow. It was like I was a drunk person with super low IQ who was trying to navigate in the world with no memories and weird stuff. And anyway, so I devoted to myself to knowledge. And at this point in my life, I identified it as having zero spirituality in my life. There was zero importance for spirituality in my life at that point. And I also took 2 years off of work to heal and recover. And the first year of that, there was a big part of that where I went on disability. I had the doctor's notes, and because of the brain damage, and then I was addressing the addictions at the same time. And it took me a very long time to even realize and identify that I had an addiction. I was already well in the healing process, and I healed a lot from the addiction before I recognized that it was an addiction. I was just working on, this is how I'm broken. This is how I need to fix myself.
Yeah, interesting.
And I was willing to, I went about 50 grand into debt healing myself, because before I was able to go on disability and get financial support, I was putting food, rent, car insurance, dog food, everything on like credit cards. And I'm like, this is the only way I know how to survive. I was like bedridden 19 hours a day sometimes. I went from being a highly athletic person, rock climbing trips, canoeing 800 miles down the Yukon River in Alaska, collecting scientific data, hiking, you know, water sports, all sorts of things. That was like my identity as like a physically active person. And then I went down to basically like being very sick in every way, bedridden, a lot of times on and off. And so I took 2 years off of work. I'm like, and my one and only priority is to heal myself, heal and recover. Like it's my full-time job. I'm working overtime, time and a half, devoting my every waking hour to recovering and healing from this. And I knew some fundamental things that is true for anyone going through addiction recovery, anyone who needs to recover from PTSD and trauma. There's two conditions that the brain has, which is a hypervigilant limbic system. Mine was off the charts, crazy hypervigilant, which means that my stress response was enormous to tiny things. Everything was, and which is during withdrawal, anyone going through withdrawal has a hypervigilant limbic system. And so I became an expert in reducing the hypervigilance of a limbic system. No matter what the cause, it doesn't matter what the cause was. And because of my brain condition and the 19 millimeter lesion in the left front lobe of my brain, and I basically also had a reduced prefrontal cortex, which is the same as anyone who has an addiction has a reduced prefrontal cortex, the functioning of the prefrontal cortex. And so this neurotoxin basically set me up to be a poster child for addiction. And so I learned the science, but then through the healing modalities that I learned the science could help me with, started giving me spiritual experiences. And I currently now identify as being a highly spiritual person. That happened as a result of the recovery process. And that's a really common thing for people who go through recovery, is it either creates or strengthens the spirituality side of an individual. In many cases, not in every case, but in many cases. I was one of the type of people who would kind of like look like, I'm like, science is the only way. Yeah. And that was holding me back and at first only taking answers from the peer-reviewed scientific paper. I love science. And every time I did that, it helped me. I learned something, I put it into action, it helped me every time. But then there were other parts that it was like, oh, well, where's the scientific paper on that? But then I was so desperate to heal. I'm like, I'm just going to try it anyway. And it worked. There were things that were working. And I also used, like sometimes psychedelic drugs it would heal me physically and or emotionally. And I would do it for the intention, for the purpose of healing. And it helped me to be in a place that made life easier every day. It's not just a momentary escapism. It's in that psychedelic experience, you actually get to rewire your brain in a way that makes life easier for you every moment of every day forward. Absolutely. We do it with that healing intention. And there is science on that. There are peer-reviewed papers on that. They're especially recovering from PTSD. And there's clinical trials happening right now on that.
Oh, absolutely.
They're amazing. And so I was like, all right, I need to activate my vagus nerve and reduce the hypervigilance of my limbic system and do all these things. And so once I understood what I needed to do, I said, well, what modalities provide this? And then I did them, and then things got better, a lot better. And
yeah, I love that you were, mentioning all that. By the way, I want to take a couple of things that you just said. You just mentioned the vagus nerve.
Yes.
And that deserves one or maybe more episodes just to talk about the vagus nerve.
Absolutely.
Like I would love to, and also I would love to pick your brain because I know that you know a lot about this. And I think the audience will know that they have a beautiful tool, creating a safe access to the activation of their vagus nerve in order to calm down, you know, in order to like come to a safe space, because unfortunately, a man that is addicted to pornography starts developing this sense of like almost like living in a hostile world, you know, like a constant state of anxiety that, you know, I'm under attack, you know. They live in a hyper vigilant state, you know.
Yes.
So,
Oh, I know.
so we will do one or maybe more episodes about the vagus nerve. The other thing that I wanted to mention is, for the sake of, you know, protection, not only for us, but for everyone that is listening to this episode, Jessica and I, we have mentioned that we both work with psychedelics, and I really need to emphasize these three things. Number one, when it comes to psychedelics, please, safety first, okay? Safety first. Number two, make sure that you are not violating any law, because you need to make sure that the place where you are working with these, you know, sacred elements needs to be legal. We don't want you to break any law. And the other part is you need to understand that for thousands of years, humans have been using psychedelics as sacred help, you know, kind of like, you need to understand the seriousness and the sacredness of working with these kind of elements. Nowadays, you see like amazing work that maybe Johns Hopkins University or many other institutes, very respected in the US, are researching about the benefits that people can receive, you know, working with psychedelics. But make sure, so we are not recommending the use of psychedelics. What we are doing is sharing our experience, when what we are saying is that safety, legality, and sacredness and respect are extremely important when it comes to the use of psychedelics. You violate one of them and you will face horrible consequences. I guess it was necessary to say that, right?
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And here, you know, in the United States, the state of Oregon, I believe it's the state of Oregon, recently, I think maybe it even started last year. I have to double check. They now have, you can go in a clinical setting and receive psilocybin from magic mushrooms. Psilocybin is the active chemical ingredient, and receive therapeutic treatment in a clinical setting.
Well, I gotta tell you, like the city where I am right now in Seattle, they decriminalize psychedelics, like I think psilocybin mushrooms, I think, but it was like a few weeks ago.
Yeah, here too.
We are living right now very interesting times where they are understanding, like, you know, in politics, politicians are understanding that these are tools for, you know, mind enhancement, healing, like improvement of the quality of the human life.
Absolutely.
So we are, you know, like living times where we are going to see a very, very different planet in the next few years. Now, we might have these beautiful things happening, but also we have threats that are horrible, like porn addiction. And, you know, you and I, we've had this conversation already, Jessica. We haven't seen anything in regards to the consequences that porn addiction can create for humanity, right?
Right. It's a global problem. The silent pandemic. It's like having free crack cocaine in your pocket at all times. And it's affecting so many. And even the people who never watch pornography are still being deeply affected by it because of the ripple effect it has on society.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anyway, let's continue. Let's continue with this conversation. I'm gonna ask you a question.
Okay.
obviously the question is, what tools did you find useful along the way? And for the sake of time constraint, we are going to just mention the tools, and we'll develop just so the maybe the audience, they want more, right? Because they want tools to start implementing in their lives. In further episodes, we're going to develop. Now we're going to mention, say, what are those tools?
Yeah.
And then, in further episodes, we're going to develop a little more. So the question is, what tools did you find useful along the way to help someone with porn addiction?
All right. Self-compassion, absolute must.
Oh my
I
God.
devoted an entire year to that.
Oh.
And it's almost, that one is almost so powerful that if that's the only thing that you devote towards, everything else will fall into line, because your conscious and subconscious decisions will line up with it. All of our subconscious decisions always match our self-compassion, the way that we view ourselves as worthy or not, and where we are on the spectrum. So
can I ask you somehow cynical question?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna put like in a very kind of like playing a little bit devil's advocate, but I have to ask you this question for the sake of profound understanding. So see, I'm saying, Jessica, but self-compassion, like that sounds like a little woo-woo, a little like out in the clouds. Like, give me a concrete tool. Why are you saying the first one, self-compassion? This is something that I can't even touch. I can't even grasp. Why are you saying self-compassion?
Amazing question. And during the first several years of my recovery, if someone were to ask me if I had high self-compassion, I would say, of course I do. Don't you see that I only eat organic food? Look at how good I'm taking care of myself. Don't you see I go to yoga 3 times a week? Don't you see, these physical ways that I act to bring health to my body? But what most of us don't know is most decisions that we make in our entire life are subconscious decisions, and we make hundreds, thousands per day. And that's our reaction to things, different choices. Like we choose to react to how a person treats us, for example. And so my subconscious beliefs about my self-compassion, which I was totally unaware of, was I am unworthy. I am unworthy of love and good things from other people. And so I chose romantic partners throughout like my entire adult life to reinforce my subconscious beliefs of shame, inadequacy, unworthiness. Shame, inadequacy, unworthiness. Doesn't that sound like what a porn addict is going through? What did we choose for ourselves because of our subconscious beliefs about ourselves? And when I became consciously aware of that, I said, oh, I consciously want to create boundaries so I stop inviting these things. That was almost impossible for me to do because those boundaries get torn down by the larger part of who we are, which is our subconscious self. And so once I devoted my life to learning how to love myself, not just being consciously aware of it was one thing. At this point, I was consciously aware. My conscious mind was like, I am worthy of love. I am worthy of forgiveness. I am worthy of amazing things, people, places, events in my life. That was conscious awareness. That does not matter whatsoever until you subconsciously believe that to the core of who you are, because that will influence 100% of the decisions that you go and make. Your reactions, your decisions, the things, and your decisions are going to determine the results you get in your life. And so once I started to work on self-compassion, that's when it became easy for me, instead of the greatest challenge, to create healthy boundaries of, I'm not going to let you in my life because of this is very toxic for me to allow you into my life in these ways. I set up a boundary. I tried in the past to set up those boundaries when my self-compassion was low. The more I developed my self-compassion, it became effortless for me to put these healthy boundaries in my life. And those boundaries are a decision, it's a choice.
Wow.
And yeah, so.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for the explanation. And you know what? I think it was necessary to like explain this. The thing is, self-compassion is a spiritual tool. And what men that are facing pornography addiction right now, they must know is that in this healing space, they will need their spiritual tools.
Yeah.
They are extremely necessary. As a matter of fact, I would say are probably the most important. So that's why I wanted to emphasize on that question. And I'm so glad that you gave such a detailed explanation of why self-compassion is so important.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And
let's continue with the tools.
Yeah. So, and with what you were just saying, so much of the spiritual tools are actually now backed by science, and you can get peer-reviewed scientific paper on why self-compassion will get you farther in life and you'll be happy, healthier, and wealthier. And meditation, yoga, massage, nature, acupuncture, every one of these can be a spiritual experience, and everyone is very much so backed by science. So those are, I mean, I'm like, I wrote my list down of things, and I'm like, all of those things are on my list. And I also put my dog. I've had my dog, she's sleeping right here. I've had her for 17 years. And when I was going through the thick of it, she was my rock. You know, it was like, when I didn't feel like I could get through it, she helped me get through it.
Wow.
You know, a warm, loving, sentient being to be there as my protector and help me get through the hardest moments. And so if you don't have a person in your life, then pets can be, animals can be phenomenal, and time in nature. And also allowing myself to be disconnected from distraction, so I could sit with myself, understand myself, explore myself, and allow what comes up to explore it, understand it, and not hide from it.
Amazing. And by the way, I recently read an article, a scientific article, where they were actually explaining and, you know, giving exact numbers that people that live with dogs, that own, you know, a pet, they can live up to 4 more years.
Yeah.
So it is beautiful. You know, they can live longer.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it. Yeah. And I'm not surprised that that's what the science says, because of like, when you have someone, something, a pet, a dog, a person in your life, that we elevate our oxytocin, you know, and being an addict going through withdrawal, being someone who has PTSD, trying to recover, we're oxytocin deficient, and these pets can elevate our oxytocin for us.
Totally, yeah.
Okay, well then let me ask you about, you know, that's your list of healing modalities.
Okay, so yeah, and obviously telling the audience that we're going to just mention these,
right?
Then we're going to explain in further episodes with more details, you know. But the number one thing is the decision, the conscious decision, the strengthening of the commitment. Many men have tried already to quit, and they end up relapsing. So there is a way of creating almost like a conscious ritual to be fully present and make that decision like from your heart and with total coherence of your thoughts, of your word, of your body, you know. So that thing itself helps a lot, you know. So the decision and the commitment. The other part is obviously when it comes to like the temptation of relapsing, having a safety protocol is
Mhm.
extremely important. And that safety protocol must be focused on your body, because it's in your body where the addiction dwells.
Yeah.
So whenever you want to modify this, you must affect the body. So another thing, obviously, and this might sound pretty obvious, but you know what? Like it is a little hard for a man that comes from that space. Find a tribe and have a support group. Two
Mhm.
different things, huh? Tribe is the people that you're going to start building a new life with. You know, you're going to, this is the people that, okay, I've been procrastinating on this specific activity. I've always wanted to play the guitar. I've always wanted to learn how to speak Spanish. I've always wanted to learn how to dance, whatever kind of dance. I've always wanted to learn how to write code, you know? It doesn't really matter. Like the thing is, you've been devoting hours to, you know, masturbation with porn. Now you're going to use the time and the sexual energy that you were wasting on, on those activities into a new life. So you're going to start building that new skill activity, you know, within a new tribe that is going to start building a new life for yourself. So the tribe is the one that is going to be around you, creating an interesting life, a life that you don't have to run away from that life anymore, you
Yeah.
know, towards porn, of course.
A life that supports you for your
Exactly.
supports everything that you want that's good for you.
Exactly. The other part of the social connection is the support group, which
Mhm.
is which is a smaller group that actually knows, they know about your struggle, and they are going to be there to support you whenever you need them. You know,
Yes.
I usually teach them how to build this small support group, which is usually like very close friends, usually some sort of authority, like a therapist or a coach or a pastor or a doctor, whoever. And then very close friends or a brother, or you know, people that can be there for you specifically in moments when you need them, you know. So building the tribe and the support group, like, I think is extremely important. Creating an activity to channel, I mentioned this already, but create, like having a specific activity where you're going to focus these newly discovered um, chunks of time that you used to do using porn, you know,
Yes.
and the energy and the focus and the attention and all the resources that you can give to this new activity that can help you build a beautiful life. Um, Another thing that is extremely important is to build a morning routine. Your morning is the childhood of your day. You
Mm.
know, if your childhood in your life, if your childhood was good, most likely you will have that beautiful pattern throughout the life. If
Yeah.
your morning is good and you start on a high, you know, energy and high, beautiful behavior, the later on in the day, you're going to keep that. So building a morning routine is
Yes.
extremely important. As a matter of fact, we are going to dedicate most likely more than one episode to rituals and morning routine and stuff like that, you know. So
I love that. I love that you said that. It's like,
oh
especially because so many of us reflexively reach for our phone first thing in the morning. And that's like on a
mm,
neurochemical level, like the most dangerous thing that we can do if we want to have a productive day and have motivation
exactly.
for that productivity.
Exactly. So basically, you know, obviously I can extend that list, but I just mentioned like really basic stuff, and we can actually like dive into all those things in further episodes that are, you know, are going to help men to really remove themselves from the old equation of their failure days.
Yeah,
And
creating a
now
new.
building a new equation with different variables and creating a beautiful lives for themselves. So yeah, those are like some of the tools that have worked for me. Of course, we both can go into more details on
Yeah.
each one,
Uh-huh.
why they work, what's the backup when it comes to science on that. But I think with that, is enough for now.
Yes.
And I want to ask you one last question.
Okay.
How is your life better now?
I love that question. The reason why I love that question is because life is so much better
Mm-hmm.
that it's easy to answer. So one, the functioning of my brain in every way that a brain can function works so much better now than it did before I got brain damage.
Mm-hmm.
Because the brain is very neuroplastic. It can
Mm-hmm.
change, and it can change the way it functions. And so I learned so much about the brain and the mind. So the brain is the physical structure. The mind is how the brain works. The mind is the brain in operation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned about the brain and the mind in a way that the things that I like to learn, I learn them in such a way that it makes it easier for me to enjoy life and bring joy, pleasure, success into my life. And now I do that for myself. And it taught me how to be like, I just now have an enormous amount of compassion for other people, and especially people who are suffering. It gave me massive amounts of empathy and compassion. That's such a massive silver lining for me to have in my life, and what compels me and drives me to do what I do. And it allowed me to shift my perspective on almost everything in my life that makes life easier. Things that I once in the past would have perceived as a problem, I no longer see as a problem. Things that I do still view, I don't even like to say a problem. There's no problems in my life. There are only challenges. When you overcome a challenge, you become stronger. So even if an unwelcomed massive challenge comes into my life, I have trained myself to look at the silver linings of that challenge, not just once I've completed it and look back, but now as a challenge shows up, now my brain goes, wow, this is going to be maybe difficult to go through, but it's going to teach me new things, give me silver linings, make me a stronger person, and make life easier to enjoy, easier to be healthy and happy and joyous. So problems to convert into challenges that I can be thankful for. That's huge. And I've learned back on the compassion for other people, you develop compassion for yourself, you automatically start having compassion for other people. And now my autopilot is I'm a significantly less judgmental person. I've shifted from judgment to compassion towards other people. Even if I see other people behaving in ways that are unwelcomed by society, that are like just obviously like not good for the person and the people around them, instead of being judgmental, I switch to compassion and say, wow, only a person who's suffering would act out in that way. Wow, only a person who's suffering would treat another person so poorly. Wow, that person must be suffering on a deep level. And instead of having these like stressful hormones of judgment, which when we judge another person, we neurochemically and hormonally can hurt ourselves on elevating our stress response. Now it's towards compassion. Well, like, wow, that person must be going through a hard time if that's how they're behaving.
Wow.
And I can still maintain my healthy boundaries with that person.
That's so true. Wow. That's
Yeah.
so true. Yeah. And I can totally see it because, I've lived the experience of being an addict, and today I've worked with hundreds of men, like that come from different levels of that issue, but I can totally see what you're saying. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Life becomes easier when we switch from judgment to compassion. so much easier. We make it easier on ourselves when we just make that switch. And another way that my life is better is I was able to resolve childhood traumas that I did not know were present. And this experience allowed me to see and understand childhood traumas that then I was able to heal and recover from, which now makes every other part of my life better, easier, more wonderful. And so that's part of it. And then I've learned to trust myself. My confidence is way up compared to what it was before. It was like, oh man, I was not like, even sometimes if I could put on the confident outward face, I was always inside, like constantly doubting myself and going into validation seeking behavior. And I like love and trust myself so much, not in a conceited way, but in a like, wow, I'm a valuable person. I have things to give and I'm worthy of love. And like having that innately and believing that now about myself subconsciously, I no longer engage in like unhealthy validation seeking behaviors. And I've learned to identify all of my limiting beliefs are now way easy to identify. The moment I identify it, I am instantly committed to myself and already working on a game plan, a solution to convert it into a limiting belief, into an empowering belief. And this whole process helped me with that a lot. But something earlier this year, I became a certified NLP practitioner, neuro-linguistic programming. And that helped me take that skill to a whole new level. Now, when I hear people speak, I can identify very easily the limiting beliefs that person has on a subconscious level. And if a person wants to work with me to eliminate those subconscious limiting beliefs and convert them into empowering beliefs, that's one of my strengths that I have now developed as a skill that shows up as massive, amazing results in my life or my client's life if we work on that together, and we do work on those things. And it can be limiting beliefs, irrational fears, all sorts of things. And it's like, wow, I first work on something within myself, master it, and then I bring it to my clients.
Wow, amazing.
So that's
I'm so
life is better now.
just to know that you have that skill, it makes me so happy, because like that's a beautiful skill to because that's literally having the power to affect someone's subconscious mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a lot.
It is a lot, because that's where all of the changes need to take place on a subconscious level, all of them. That's where our behaviors, our values, our beliefs, they need to take place on the subconscious level. And that's where my area of expertise is, the subconscious level. I call myself the subconscious connoisseur. And earlier you had mentioned you have to do physical body work during the recovery. I love that you mentioned that, because the physical body is an extension of the subconscious mind. The physical body is part of the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind, it doesn't only take place in the brain. It's our entire neurology, which touches every cell of our body. And every cell of our body is bathed in a neurochemical concoction, and they talk to each other, and there's neuroreceptors, and it's all connected.
Absolutely. Totally with you.
So how is life better for you now that you've gone through this journey?
Oh my God, is definitely, night and day difference, like well, I can extend on this for a lot, but I came up with 4 things, 4 things. And it's funny that one of the things that I mentioned is, it overlaps with yours. Okay. Which is the confidence part.
Yes.
So like the number one thing, like how my life is better now, is because I am definitely more joyful. Yes. Like I live a joyous life. Like I experience joy in my body, like, how your body will not lie to you, right? Yeah, that's right. That's right. Your body tells you, your body's taught all the time talking to you, all the time. You decide if you want to listen or not, but I can feel the joy. can feel the joy. That's on one hand. Then on the second part is that I became a better manifestor. So I can manifest a better reality for myself. As a matter of fact, this started happening before I started studying sacred sexuality. Now that I understand certain concepts in sacred sexuality, I know how sexual energy, what's the role of sexual energy in creating your reality. But before I didn't know that. So, but still I was getting the benefits of like manifesting a better reality for myself. Because at the end of the day, you got to take into account that you need congruence of your heart and your brain in order to create a reality, right?
Yes.
But you need to have your brain and your heart, they must be charged with energy so you can send the proper signal. And if they are not charged and you have wasted all your sexual energy in unconscious behavior, you know, it's like a weak battery, you know. So the second, I became a better manifestor. The third one, this is something that, you know, I love, and I know that every man that heals from porn addiction is going to love, which is I became more magnetic.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And I have no, or maybe now I have better tools and I can, but before I couldn't even explain with words. Like, I remember when I was at the worst moment of being addicted to porn, people will run away from me, especially women, you know? And now I can feel, you know, how I became more magnetic. People want to do things with me. I get requests to do collaborations. I get opportunities presented to me. I even get, you know, ladies like interested in me, in like, or I'm in a cafe, and then, you know, this, I'm like, you know, waiting for my pumpkin spice latte, right?
Yeah.
Right. That's one of my weaknesses. I know it's not the best. It's not precisely the best thing, but you know, it's seasonal. Anyway, so I'm waiting for my pumpkin spice latte right there, and I'm feeling something. And then I turn my head, and I have this beautiful woman like looking at me, and then she smiles at me, and you know, like all the nonverbal clues to spark attraction.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute, where was this woman when I was like totally addicted to porn? And obviously, I know that I am sending a different, you know, biomagnetic signal to the world, you know?
Yeah.
So I became more magnetic, and that increases the quality of my social life. And the fourth, and the number 4 would be confidence.
Yes.
The one that you mentioned. Because you become more confident when you start healing from porn addiction, when you like, there's no explanation. It's just like you are happier with yourself. You are more comfortable in your own skin. You like better the reflection that you look on the mirror.
Yeah.
And there's no, as I'm telling you, there's no rational explanation. It's just something that starts happening. And every man that detach himself from watching porn and masturbating, they like almost immediately, 10 days, 15 days later, they start feeling more confident. So that's what happened to me. I just came down to those 4 for the sake of time of this conversation, but I would say those are the 4 that are the most, you know, the ones that are the most important for me.
Yeah, I love that. And you know, our overlapping one with confidence, that will affect the results for everything in our life, because then we become a higher, healthy risk taker. And those healthy risks are what bring the greatest things into our lives. And if we don't have the confidence to be a healthy risk taker, we're just going to be kind of living like below the status quo, at or below the status quo. And we'll have more confidence to do, like, get the job we want, get the partner we want, the way that you show up in the bedroom with a partner.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, what it's 93% of what we communicate is through body language and tone of voice. And confidence has a massive effect on body language and tone of voice. How you can posture up in certain ways that are of a confident, bold posture, or you can be the lack of confidence. You bring your shoulders in, you might hunch a little, dip your chin down, where you gaze your eyes, the tone of your voice, and people will notice. That's the thing that we are like evolutionarily wired deeply to pay attention to and notice. So we might be attracted to someone without consciously being able to explain why, but it might all be in the body language and tone of voice.
Absolutely. Jessica, I need to ask you a very important question.
Yes.
Are we going to do an entire episode about confidence?
Yes, I think we should.
Absolutely. Jessica, thank you so much. I think this has been a beautiful first episode.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if you have something else to add.
I'm feeling pretty content. My oxytocin is up. I'm feeling good, calm. The more we have elevated oxytocin and serotonin, then we don't experience lack or want or desire, because we already feel like we have it all.
What would you tell the audience in regards of what's coming, what to expect from the Gonzalo and Jessica show, and what would be your message on finishing this first episode?
I would say, if there's a topic that you're interested in learning about, it's on the way. It's on the way.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And just for those of you who are listening, Gonzalo and we already made a huge list, a giant list of topics we want to cover. But feel free to leave in the comment sections like what your preference is, because we might want to then potentially prioritize covering that first if you're commenting on like, tell me about this, teach me about that. And we can cater to our audience, which is you.
Absolutely. And what I can tell you that are listening somewhere out there is that we really care. We care about the men that are suffering with this problem. We care about the partner that is also suffering with this. Pornography addiction affects humans at every level. I've worked with a bass boy from Miami, and I've worked from a high executive from a Fortune 500 company from Seattle. So it doesn't really matter. It is a problem that can affect any human being. And this is a show that is done with passion, that is done with love. And we are joining forces, the brilliant mind that is Jessica and myself, putting ourselves out there to at least put our little help so you can heal and you can also extend the love. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Jessica.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm gonna put a link, and I'm sure Gonzalo will probably have a link if you are, want to reach out with us, if you want to work with us, join the tribe, and that the movement of us who are going the way of getting rid of pornography addiction and jumping into an empowering sex life, but also not just the sex life, every single area of your life, every area.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
This was great. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Gonzalo and Jessica Show, where you are learning to become porn-free and empower your sex life.
Remember to subscribe, and if you loved the episode, please share the love with anyone that might need it.